to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin, here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is experience the experience. So, what this is about is that we are meaning making machines. We try to attribute meaning to everything, including our emotions, our physicalness, our pretty much everything. So, what would it be to just experience the experience, and how might that bring us into the moment? So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue, and now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you joining us this morning. So today we are, and welcome to everybody else who's with us. We are talking about experiencing the experience. And we're talking about this particularly in relation to emotions, because when we feel feelings, I don't know if it's true for you, but for me, historically, the inclination, if I felt sad or I felt anxious or whatever, I would look for the reason why. So the question would be, why am I feeling this way, or what's wrong? So the question, what's wrong, is not a productive question, because our mind is like a heat-seeking missile. It's going to go for whatever target you direct it to. So if the question is what's wrong, we're going to find all kinds of answers to the question, what's wrong? So if we instead approach our experience with curiosity, if we instead say, wow, I'm feeling this feeling. Where is it in my body? What are the sensations of it? And we could look for what triggered it, because that can be useful information coming from curiosity, rather than making it be that something's wrong. That it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to explore more deeply, like what's happening here. But I think what we're talking about most this morning is really the inclination to ascribe story to our feelings. And that's not necessarily out of place, as long as we can recognize the story without getting sucked into it. So we can look at, what am I feeling? Interesting. What's the trigger? Interesting. Where does that harken back to? Because generally we can notice that if we're feeling something really intensely, the likelihood is, especially if it persists, the likelihood is that it's linked to something that happened in the past. And we can identify these situations, particularly when we see ourselves overreacting to something. Like we'll have something happen and we blow up and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? What's up with that? Well, the thing to look at is, what is this activating in me? And that can lead us to the story. It can lead us to meaning that we ascribe. And if we're diligent about it and allowing ourselves to be sort of curious observers rather than being swept into the story, then we might discover something that's calling for our attention, calling to be soothed and dissolved. Maybe something, often something from childhood or growing up, where we had an experience and this current experience is reminiscent of that in certain ways and activates all those old feelings. So the thing that I want to focus on today, though, is allowing ourselves to be in the experience of the feeling without the meaning. Because when we experience emotions, it's a physiological thing too. We may have a story loop that's running in our heads, but we have a visceral experience typically as well, because emotions impact our physiology, the chemical set that we're producing in response to this emotion, and it becomes sort of a continuing cycle. And if we can allow ourselves to say, okay, I'm feeling this feeling, I'm calling it anger. Great. Where's that feeling in my body? Where do I feel it? And some folks have a really hard time localizing the experience because we're trained to be so in our heads that many of us dissociate from our body. And I'm here to say that if we can reconnect to our body, what that does is it allows us to reconnect to a really deep source of intelligence and wisdom. And so if we can reconnect and feel the feeling, experience the experience of that moment, when we're present to it and deepen into it, what my observation is for myself and for so many clients is that experience dissolves, it shifts, the emotion shifts, the sensation of it shifts. And it can shift even more profoundly if we look at, oh, okay, well, there's the 5-year-old me that was wounded, and this is reminiscent of that upset. And what does that little girl need? Maybe she needs a hug. Maybe she needs some love. Maybe she needs to be affirmed and told, it's okay. It's okay. You're okay. I'm here. Maybe she needs companionship. Maybe you get the idea. But the thing is, when we allow ourselves to experience our experience without judgment, without saying what's wrong or what's wrong with me for feeling this way, that we then are granted an inroad to being able to release pent up energies. And oftentimes, in the course of this process, people will cry. And that's okay. So crying's gotten a really bad rap, I think, in so many ways. What we're doing when we're crying is we're releasing pent-up energy. Same thing when we laugh. There's a line from a Joni Mitchell song, laughing and crying. It's the same release. Good morning, Shosha. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. So we're talking about being willing to experience our experience so that we can actually bring ourselves into the present moment. And I don't know if it's in the air or what, but there's been a lot of emotional fluctuation for me over the past number of days. And I'm very present to this, and I'm speaking this because I don't think I'm alone in this experience, and learning how to navigate challenging emotions, I think, is something that is a skill that all of us can benefit from. And part of that is to be willing, as uncomfortable as it is, to experience the experience, not to get into the justifying and the rationalizing and the explaining about what the emotion is, but to be experiencing it with curiosity, even when it's uncomfortable. So all of these practices and tools of transformation are great when things are going great, but they're more important when things aren't. And that's when it's tougher to rely on these things. Good morning, Rukmini. Welcome. It's great to have you joining us this morning. So the idea here is, again, with emotion, we can think of emotion as energy in motion. And oftentimes it's actually energy that is compressed, condensed, constricted. And when we allow it to be in motion, then it diffuses, that energy diffuses. So when we feel sadness, when we feel anxiety, when we feel anger, the temptation is to push it away, is to resist it, to pretend it's not there. If I just shift my attention, it'll go away. And it, as transformation oriented people, we become very adept at shifting our attention and transforming what we call negative emotion, right? But the thing is that it takes a lot of energy to do that. It takes a lot of energy to sustain that. And it's almost as if, in fact, I have an example for this. It's almost as if that negative emotion is always there, just waiting. It's dormant and just waiting to reassert itself. The example that I want to share is with a client. The other day, they were talking about this sense of frustration that was ever present. And they felt it as a pressure from the back of their chest, pushing kind of on their lungs and their heart from the back. And we were addressing that sensation and what does it feel like? And if you could create an image of that, what would it look like? And as you're present to that appearance, what shifts? Is the feeling still the same? Is the image still the same distance from you? Are the colors of the image still the same? Are the edges the same, et cetera, et cetera? And so what was happening is they said, well, it's sleeping now. And I said, well, how do you know that it's sleeping versus that it's gone? And they said, well, I think it's always there. And I said, well, let's look more deeply. Is it there? Is it sleeping? Or is it gone? And what was fascinating is that as they allowed themselves to experience this experience, as they allowed themselves to experience the pressure, to have the visual, to be inquiring or observing without judgment, without additional story. I guess it was a story that it's always there. But what happened was that it dissolved, that it actually dissolved. And it wasn't there anymore. It wasn't sleeping. It just wasn't there. And I think that this is possible for all of us as we move through the ebbs and flows of emotion and energetic fields, and as we interact with energetic fields, because it's a give and take, it's a flow in and a flow out. And we can be different degrees of permeable. This is what we were talking about yesterday, is when our own energy channel is I want to say weakened, but it's, I guess, when it's more diffuse, then it creates a permeability, right? Like if we're diffused, then there's more room for other energies to flow in and flow out, and then impact that our energy field. I think this, I mean, it makes sense to me. Hopefully it's communicating to you. You get what I'm talking about. So when we strengthen our own energy channel, then it's easier to distinguish our own energy from other energies that are then peripheral. We're not sort of dissolving into this broader amorphous energy. So allowing the energy within our field to get clearer and clearer is part of the work, as far as I can tell. And how we allow that to get clearer and clearer is to notice when there are areas of congestion, constriction, compression. And those areas are these, what we often call negative emotions. Now, I also assert and invite you to check out this notion that if we're experiencing what we might call a negative emotion, that it's a communication from our body and being that something needs attention. It may be that there's an emotion that is ready to clear, a pattern that's ready to clear. So I like to say, if it's coming up, it's coming up to heal. It's coming up because you're ready. And so rather than feeling like the negative quote unquote emotions are a bad thing, they can also be an invitation to look more deeply, to engage more fully, to complete something that you're now strong enough or ready to complete. And that notion of, if it's coming up to heal, and that it's an opportunity, allows us maybe to release some of the resistance to experiencing those emotions. It's very easy as empathic peoples, as so many of us are, to get swept up in the emotion. And it's also very easy to lose the distinction of what's me and what's not me. So yesterday we were talking about how we can bring our clarity back, how we can bring our alignment back by doing a chakra alignment. There's this other practice that I just remembered this morning, actually, that's really, really helpful too. And it's this simple, is to take your hand on your head and rub from your forehead down to the nape of your neck and say, I'm me and only me. And it may seem really silly, but oh my gosh, it's so profound. I'm me and only me. In other words, I'm not taking on stuff from outside. It helps to reorient us. I'm me and only me. Try it. I'm curious to know what your experience is of that. For me, I found it to be really profound to reorient myself and to bring myself back to alignment and presence. So, this whole notion is experiencing the experience rather than resisting it, rather than resisting the pain, even physical pain. So, this is wild. It's now happened twice for me, where once I was out for a walk and I twisted my ankle. I actually fell into the street. Cars stopped. People came, picked me up, took me out of the street, offered to get me an ambulance. And I opted not to. And I just sat there after they left. I found a place to sit out of the road, obviously, and sat with my ankle and allowed myself to feel the sensation. And I invite you, if you experience what we would typically call pain, to rechristen it as sensation. But anyway, I allowed myself to feel the sensation. And at one point, it got excruciating, like incredibly painful. It got worse. And emotion came up, stuff around my dad came up, and then the pain went away. So that was, I don't have a sense of timing, probably more than a year ago. And then just last week, I guess, I I twisted my ankle again. And there were people there that came to my rescue, people standing by me to make sure I was okay. And I said, I just want to sit here and be with this for a minute. And at one point, the sensation got more intense. Now, this didn't take 45 minutes this time, but I was just sitting there. They said, do you want me to call an ambulance? I said, I don't know yet. Let me just sit here and see what happens. I mean, I really twisted my ankle. And I just sat there. That, as I said, the pain at one moment got even more intense. I was allowing myself to just experience it. And then it went away. And I was able to walk. And I walked gingerly at first. And then I was okay. And I can tell you that there was no swelling, there was no bruising, just crazy. So Rosalind says the Elvis, smoothing the hair, a nurturing feeling, an offshoot of tapping. Heartache shows up as tension in the back and stomach. It's like the heart is trying to make peace and shows up as grief. Then the mind makes up stories to make sense of things. I think you nailed it, Rosalind. And I think the thing that we get to be alert to is that the mind is making up stories to try and make sense. And I think that we're way too committed to making sense because really, so often the making sense is just making stories. And if we can just be with the experience, it gives us power to shift things, often in miraculous ways. So it's part of that making sense trap that has us ruminate over and over and play the same story and play the same story. There have been times when I was so upset and I was trying to be with the upset, and my mind just broke in again and again and again to try and create this story loop. It just really was something that I had to deliberately, actively choose not to engage in, and to come back to the feeling, the sensation. And when you talk about the heart trying to make peace and it shows up as grief, there's a lot in the world that we could be grieving about, and it's appropriate, and we don't have to live in that grief every moment. So the thing is, experience it when you experience it, and when you don't experience it, allow yourself not to experience it, because sometimes people feel guilty for not feeling grief. Cut that stuff out. Just feel what you feel, experience the experience. It brings us present. It brings us into a moment. It brings us into alignment with ourselves and our own energy. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it's such a gift and a privilege to have the opportunity to share these morning musings. I'm guessing this might be Dido. Dido says, good morning. How to detach from engaging in the mind ruminating, but tap into emotions. Yeah, so it takes a literal redirect, and you might even put your hands on your head and like move your hands from your head to your heart to feel the feelings, and to say, what am I, to engage the mind by asking questions like, what am I feeling? If I could have a sense, oh, it's Sue. Hi, Sue. Welcome. Great to have you here with us this morning. So you could be saying, what is the emotion I'm feeling? If I could feel it in my body, even if you're not aware, if I could feel it in my body, where might I be feeling it? And take whatever answer comes. And if I had a sensation there, what might that sensation be? And that's a way to engage your mind, to get it out of that loop, because you're activating it or entertaining it with some other questions. And then that can help you focus too. So hopefully, what am I feeling? And I'm feeling angry. Okay, great. If I'm feeling angry, if I could feel that in my body, where would that sensation be? It would be in my left shoulder. Okay, great. It's in my left shoulder. And if I could actually feel that feeling, that sensation, what would the sensation be? So good luck with it. I'm curious to know how that works out for you. So love, love, love to all of you, and deepest gratitude. Until next time.